South Africa's parliament has passed a major education bill that could see parents face prison if their children are not in school. Now, under the Basic Education Laws Amendment, which is also known as Bela, they could be jailed for up to 12 months if their children are truant or if they're not enrolled when they reach school age. Now, Bela also introduces a ban on corporal punishment in all schools. And that's not even what we're talking about. But it is the biggest education overall since the end of apartheid in 1994. Now, the governing party, the African National Congress, the ANC, says the bill will transform the education system to address historical and present challenges. However, the biggest opposition party in the country, the Democratic Alliance, DA, has condemned this bill, saying that it gives the state too much control over schools and will definitely lead to the collapse of education. The DA also says that the bill disempowers schools, parents, and communities and fails to address a single one of the systemic challenges that impede quality education. Now, in addition to that, people are also saying that these people who are not well equipped, and by well equipped I mean with finances, enough to even survive, each day, are now going to face criminal charges if they do not enroll their children in school. And they say, make it make sense. Anyways, joining us to have this conversation now, we're joined by Andile Gidana, Administrative Officer, Metro North Education District, Western Cape Education Department. Thank you so much, Andile, for joining us.
I think this is Dr. Hermon, yeah.
All right, we don't have Andile yet, but we also have Dr. Hermon Berhane Ogbamichael, the Head of Journalism Department, Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Thank you so much, Dr. Hermon, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. All right, while we wait for Andile, we're just going to go ahead to have the conversation. Now, Dr. Hermon, how exactly can we strike a balance between ensuring that there is access to education and considering the socioeconomic difficulties faced by many South African families currently?
Well, this amendment, let me talk about this basic amendment, Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, or what they call it, Bela, which was adopted on the 23rd of September 2023 by the National Assembly. As you have said, the DA has actually condemned it, or they rejected it. Also, ACDP, one member and two from DA in the committee, in the portfolio committee of basic education, because they believe that there are some, the state will have so much control on it. They don't want the community-based education to be replaced or being controlled by state. And also there is some facts, 1/6 of the children in South Africa are orphaned. And as you have said, there are some socioeconomic challenges, like the over 60%, if I'm not wrong, about 64% children are from low-income households. So if you're telling me that you're going to punish or penalize parents who don't send their children to school, then there will be some challenges with that. I mean, in terms of, because you're trying to address some rights, but at the same time, you're also going to affect also some people in terms of their rights. Because if somebody is poor and cannot afford, then the government has to make provision for these low-income parents for their children to send it to school.
All right, very quickly, I want to know, has there been any action taken by the people against this bill, or has there been any correction made or amendment made to this bill? Because obviously from things we've said now, looking at how this is going to also impede on the parents' rights as well, it doesn't exactly look very feasible. So is there any action being taken either from the South Africans themselves or from the government?
Well, what I'm aware of is I'm not aware that any parent who has been penalized or been imprisoned or taken to jail for not sending their children to school. I'm sure there are many children out there who are not going to school. What are you even going to say? South Africans who are homeless, trained in the streets, who do you take? I mean, which parent are you going to make responsible in terms of that? Can even a homeless person, for example, send his child to school, let alone also with these low-income households? So, but I'm aware that there are some who do some corporal punishment. I mean, taken also to court, or also taken to social workers, not only educators, but or in the school system, but also parents as well.
All right.
So we are yet to see the action out of this bill.
Okay. Very quickly, I'd like us to take a look at South Africa's economy and the supposed decline. What exactly are the key factors contributing to the current decrease in the cost of living in South Africa?
Well, we all have the post-COVID knockdown. As you see, COVID 2019 has affected many households, and people are still feeling the heat. The cost of living is high. There is also normally inflation in the world. I mean, you can also talk internationally. The Russian-Ukraine war has affected also so much economies, especially in the continent, including South Africa. But also there are some other factors in the government. I have to admit also, we have to speak of corruption that also affects not only South Africa, many countries in Africa and other parts of the world. And you can name more. Maybe there is also high unemployment, especially in the youth. I mean, 65% of those that are not employed, which means I think our employment here is about 32%, are between 15 and 24-year-old. So these are the factors actually that are affecting the household and the economy in general in the country.
Right. Now, looking at this bill, right, you say that as parents, you should be able to send your children to school. That means that the parents should have options or alternative approaches. Those who cannot afford literally to send their children to school should have a form of support or government aid or incentive. So are there any alternative approaches like financial incentives or support programs that the government is making available that can effectively encourage parents to prioritize education? Because you have to make these options available before you now decide to penalize parents who refuse, having these options to still send their children to school. So is there any form of support giving to the parents?
Well, let's also see in the Constitution, Section 29, one of the Constitution states that everyone has the right to basic education, including adult basic education, or what we call AET. Also, South Africa is trying to align or signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children, or what we call UNCRC. So South Africa is to fulfill its obligations. The government has to make sure that these constitutional rights are fulfilled. There are also some acts like Children's Act of, I think, 38 of 2005, which also ensures that the children are protected, their rights are protected, which also includes their rights to education, to basic education. Of course, the South African government must make provision, at least provision for those with low income households, because if they don't make that provision, then this bill will be just on paper. In higher education, for example, there is NSFAS. Still, even there are challenges with NSFAS. They provide students with some assistance with their fees, also maybe for residences and for food and so on. Because a child who doesn't have food to eat, who doesn't have transport to go to school, who cannot afford fees, then he cannot make this bill implemented. So the government must have some financial assistance in order to make provisions for this bill to be fully implemented.
Now, let's say they follow through with these bills, right? And putting in mind that there are still people in marginalized communities where poverty levels are often, often like 100%. What now becomes the fate of the children when majority of the parents in these marginalized communities are spending 12 months taking turns to spend time in jail? What is the fate of these children that the government is trying to protect?
Then I'm sure some sections within the legal system. I'm not a lawyer or I'm not in the law field, but I'm sure that there are measures to counteract the measures taken under this bill. That's why also DA and ACDP have a concern on this issue. I know EFF, one member of the EFF and 6 members of the ANC have adopted this bill, but that means they have to make sure that parents who were taken to jail should be justified. I think also I have read somewhere in the bill that there should be a justifiable case that the parent was negligent in not sending the child to school. So there should be some provision for that. I don't think somebody who cannot afford, who can justify that they couldn't afford to send their children to jail would be actually justifiable.
Right. Also, I would like for us to talk about the educational system in South Africa and the level of job opportunity available in the country. Because it's one thing to enforce this bill and make sure that every parent sends their children to school. That's an issue that we talked about some days ago about Nigeria. You know, the government of Nigeria is trying to return about 2 million out of school children back to school, which is a good initiative. But what is the guarantee that they will get jobs after they're done with school? So I think I'm going to ask the same question. How is it in South Africa? What is it like, getting jobs after school? Because we need to talk about the possibility of even getting jobs. Because a lot of parents will feel like even if they can afford it, if they had to choose between running a business and sending their children to school, and they see that there is no ROI, the children go to school and they don't get jobs at the end of the day, they would rather spend their money doing something else that will bring money for their families to feed these same children. So what is the guarantee that these children would actually get jobs when they're done?
There are 3 quality councils in South Africa. One is Umalusi that actually monitors or deals with the general education and training and further education and training up to about grade 12 or level 5 higher certificate perhaps. But also, I'm not sure, not higher certificate, but generally until grade 12. We have also the QCT of the Quality Council on Trades and Occupations that deals with the vocational qualifications, trades and vocation. And we have also the Council on Higher Education, that is CHE. So the 2 councils, QCTO and CHE, they ensure that one of the criteria is work-based learning, or what they call now work-integrated learning. Any student who is actually, especially post-matric, is a must to do an internship or work-integrated learning as part of the studies. So that is an entry to the job world for the student, to make sure that somehow they start there, then they find a job. For those especially who cannot find a job straight after graduation. So even though there is high level of unemployment in South Africa, one of the highest in the world, as I have said, about 32%, and 65% are about the youth between 15 and 24. But the government tries their best also to put students on internships or some sort of that work-related opportunities while they study. or after completing some courses in their studies somehow. But the problem in South Africa sometimes it's not even about job creation, it's about skills gap. Are we actually training people based on what is necessitated in the industry? So there should exist a conversation between the school system, the higher education in South Africa, and also the industry itself. Because if the industry is not involved, also the community, if these four, including the community, are not conversing, then the job opportunities will be a little bit bleak or invisible there. So it should be more visible. Where are the industries where they need these skills? So actually, I have to admit that that is the challenge that South Africa has as we speak.
All right, Dr. Hermon Ogbamichael, Head of Journalism Department, Peninsula Technology in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you join us on the show and sharing your thought on the Bela Bill. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
It's a pleasure. All right, you're still watching Village Square Africa, and when we come back, we'll go straight to Nigeria to take a look at the initiative of launching the fourth bridge in Lagos State. Do stay with us.